Hi there, my name is Graham Collier. I'm the Canadian Portfolio Manager for Nufarm Agriculture, and I'm going to take a few minutes to share some information with you about our new herbicide, Valtera EZ. So Valtera EZ is designed for pulse growers and wheat growers in Western Canada. Its target crops are chickpeas, field peas, lentils, soybeans, and spring wheat. And the key weeds that it controls are group 2, 4, and 9 resistant Kosha, group 2 resistant annual sow thistle, chickweed, seedling dandelion, and has strong suppression of volunteer canola, all herbicide resistant biotypes of volunteer canola. So really some key weeds for us in the Western Canadian pulse growing region. The active ingredient in Valtera EZ is flumioxazin. It's a group 14 PPO inhibitor. And this is a pre-emergent soil residual herbicide. So you want this herbicide applied either before or just after seeding your crop so that it can be there to kill broadleaf weeds as they emerge. What's new about Valtera EZ from the Valtera herbicide you're familiar with in the past is that it's now an easy to use liquid formulation. So it's an SC formulation. It comes in a case with 2 jugs. They're 4.8 liters each. And that small case will treat 160 acres. So Valtera EZ works the same as most other soil applied residual herbicides. You want to apply it either in the fall or in the spring, and it needs rainfall to activate. So what that means is after you put your herbicide down on top of your field on your crop stubble, you need either snow melt in the spring or a rainfall in the spring after application to move that herbicide from the surface of the soil into the soil in a nice tight band. When it's in the soil in a nice tight band at the surface, that's when weeds will germinate, grow through that layer. They'll get herbicide on their leaves, their cotyledons, as they grow through that soil layer. And when they emerge and get hit by the sun, they'll die off. When I say activation, what I really mean is the movement of that herbicide, those herbicide molecules in the soil water solution. And that's achieved by, again, either that snow melt or that rainfall. This is a picture of what soil water solution actually looks like. So if you magnify a small space of soil, you'll see individual soil particles, like in this picture. And in the space between those soil particles, you'll have either air or water. When a herbicide, a soil applied residual herbicide, is activated, it's moved from the surface of the soil and it's present in that soil water. And those individual herbicide molecules, they live in a state of flux now between being connected to a soil particle and being in that soil water and available for uptake. And they'll go back and forth and back and forth. When a weed germinates and grows through the soil, it comes into contact with these soil particles and with that water, and it takes up herbicide from that water as it grows through, and then will die off. What's unique about Valtera EZ compared to Valtera WDG in the past is really twofold. First is the surfactant package that's included in the product. So really the job of a surfactant is to grab onto a herbicide molecule on one side and grab onto a water molecule on the other and hold those two things together. So with a higher surfactant load in this liquid Valtera EZ, you see a higher proportion of herbicide molecules releasing off soil into the water. The other factor, and really one of the main factors of difference between the two herbicide formulations, is the particle size of the actual herbicide molecules themselves. There are more smaller herbicide particles in the Valtera EZ formulation than there were in the Valtera WDG formulation. So when you have more smaller herbicide particles, you have more individual particles per unit space that go down, even though you apply the same rate of active ingredient across your field. You have more individual herbicide particles using this new formulation. Those individual herbicide particles have a greater surface area. So you'll have more herbicide moving back and forth between soil particle and soil water, and more herbicide available for uptake by your weeds as they grow. For those same reasons, that smaller particle size and that surfactant package, it actually takes less water or less rainfall or snow melt for Valtera EZ to activate in the soil than it took for Valtera WDG in the past. The result of these benefits that I've just talked about, that surfactant package and that smaller particle size, shows up in weed control. So this graph represents the average of 61 trials performed over 2 years in Saskatchewan, Alberta, and Manitoba. And they directly compare Valtera WDG on the left to Valtera EZ on the right. The exact same amount of Valtera in both cases, the exact same amount of flumioxazin active ingredient, the only difference being the liquid formulation. The increase in broadleaf weed control across these 61 trials was 13%, owing again to the smaller particle size and surfactant package, so really more herbicide available for uptake relative to the WDG form. We can also see it on individual weed species, a differential response between them. In the case of Kosha, we saw a 13% increase in Kosha control just by switching to the new formulation of Valtera EZ. No additional active ingredient, no other herbicides, just the switch in formulation. Annual sow thistle, very important weed for us to control in our crop, in our pulse growing regions, an increase of 10% with the switch to Valtera EZ. And on volunteer canola, an increase in suppression of 6%. The picture you're seeing on the left is an example of how you might see Valtera working in the field. This is a weed, a volunteer canola plant, that germinated in the soil below the Valtera layer. It grew up into the layer. When it grew through the layer of herbicide in the top of the soil, it got herbicide on its cotyledons and on its stem as it emerged up out of the soil. And then Valtera acts like a contact herbicide. So everywhere where the herbicide touched that plant as it grew through the soil, when it emerged into the sunlight and switched to living off of energy from the sun as opposed to energy from the seed, it started creating chlorophyll, and it's really that chlorophyll process that Valtera uses to kill the plant. So you get this fast contact type burning on the cotyledons that kill off this plant. If we take a step back and look at it from a macro view, the field on the right had Valtera applied to the headlands. So that's a spring wheat field, had a lap of Valtera put around it, and you can see the line going straight through the middle of the picture on the left. That's actually Kosha populations that you can see there. So on the right, you have two things working for you. You have Valtera, and you have the competitive ability of that wheat crop. So together, they work to give you better control than really either of those things alone. A good competitive crop on a good plant stand paired with a soil applied residual herbicide will improve your weed control. So Valtera EZ, it can be applied either in the fall or the spring, like creating a layer of saran wrap on your soil for that plant, those weeds to grow through. You put it down, you get your activation, again, either from snowmelt or rainfall, and your weed control is there for you 6 to 8 weeks into the next growing season. Those key weeds that we're after with Valtera EZ, and we're seeing improved performance on group 2, 4, and 9 resistant Kosha, group 2 resistant annual sow thistle, volunteer canola, chickweed, pigweed, lamb's quarters, many of our key weeds in our pulse growing and cereal growing regions of Western Canada. The new formulation is easy to use. It's cheaper to put down. It goes down through your sprayer as opposed to a broadcaster, something like a rival product. You have the flexibility to apply in the fall, apply in the spring, and have a good selection of crops to grow the following year. And of course, it's an easy to use liquid formulation. Speed up time while you're mixing, easier to mix with other products, and easier to improve the weed control on your farm. If you have any questions about Valtera EZ or really any of the residual chemistry products available from Nufarm Agriculture, please give us a call at the 1-800 number line on the screen or visit us at nufarm.ca.